When I moved in, there was noise. And I thought, that's an old house. And then I heard, Mom! And I fucking shot up and I said, someone's in here!
In 2011, Adele became concerned with the amount of paparazzi harassing her at her London home. As a result, she moved into an $11 million mansion in Sussex, England. The mansion consisted of 10 bedrooms, an indoor pool, and it was on a 25-acre plot of land. The home was over 100 years old, and at one point even functioned as a convent in the early 1900s. With its own chapel on site. Shortly after moving into the home, Adele began to experience strange things. She said she would constantly hear unexplained noises, and she actually thought at one point that somebody was in the house. Eventually, she began to notice that it was only certain parts of the house that had a very eerie feeling, particularly one dimly lit corridor that filled her with a sense of dread. On her 2012 60 Minutes episode with Anderson Cooper, they actually walk through this corridor, at which point Anderson compares it to the house from The Shining. It wasn't long before Adele could no longer stand being in the home alone, so she hired her female driver at the time to be a 24/7 home and bodyguard. Her driver began staying with her inside of the house. She also hired additional bodyguards to patrol the property and the grounds. Given that it was so large, she feared that at any point an actual intruder could make their way on the property. Although there was no concrete evidence to show that this house was actually haunted, they all corroborate the same eerie feelings in certain parts of the house. Given that the house was so old, there were certain features that just didn't make any sense. One of them actually being a strange public footpath running right past her front door. In 2018, Post Malone visited the Zach Bagans Haunted Museum in Las Vegas, Nevada. At one point, Post came across a strange box, which Zach introduced as a real-life Dybbuk box, which is said to actually contain a real demon. As Zach is showing the box to Post, he eventually removes the protective glass covering.
Malone is seen touching his shoulder. Baggins says Malone then saw a dark figure that night that followed them out of the museum. Some people think this is the reason Post Malone has had so many problems lately.
And after this happens, Post began noticing very unfortunate things began to happen to him. And in the coming month, Post Malone became the victim of various unfortunate events. He said only days after, he was involved in a car accident. Several days after this, when flying in a plane, he was then nearly involved in a plane crash.
I had gotten a car accident. I almost had a plane wreck. My house got broken into, all that type of stuff. Within a month's time, it was really, really odd stuff.
Post Malone believes that Zach Bagans may have inadvertently transferred the negative energy from the Dybbuk box to him. George Lopez has often said that his home is haunted, but this is one of the few stories that has actually been corroborated by other individuals inadvertently, including certain producers and sound engineers that were in his home at one point, and a contractor who found a very strange item in the old fireplace at George's home. Similar to Adele, George's home in Los Feliz is roughly over 100 years old. So George moves into this home and almost immediately begins to notice something's not right.
When I moved in, there was noise. And I thought, that's an old house. And then I heard, Mom! And I shot up and I said, someone's in here! I could go downstairs with a gun, nobody's around. Then you hear noise on the other side of the house for years. Okay, you kind of make peace with it. You know, you're like, all right, and then people come over and they're like, hey man, I went into your kitchen to grab that stuff you asked me to grab, and when I could feel somebody behind me, he goes, I thought it was the driver, and when I looked back, there wasn't anybody there, so I ran out of your house. Somebody will say, they came to do one of these like DoorDash kind of promos, and the lady was doing the sound, and she told the person that was with me, she says, tell George that I hear somebody talking. So if you can ask them to be quiet. And I said, there's nobody here. And the lady saw somebody walk by. Whatever you do, listen, if anybody has a Ouija board, throw that motherfucker away today. Because you're calling people that haven't gotten to.
While all of this can be chalked up to natural paranoia, there's one thing that happened that George himself recognized immediately as an omen. He said he was having construction work done in the home, particularly on this one fireplace. As the contractor was doing renovations, he found something that George would have difficulty understanding the meaning of.
And I got it. And then, you do some work to it, and in the fireplace, so my name is George because I was born, my mom wanted to name me Anastasio, who they thought my father was, and my grandmother's like, fuck him. You're not naming that motherfucker somebody that disappeared. So my grandmother goes, what's today? Tells the nurse, what's today? April 20, what's the day? It's St. George Day. George, Edward, St. George. And I told the dude, the contractor, I said, hey man, can you clean those fireplaces out? Because they look like they haven't been cleaned in forever. And when he calls me back, he goes, hey, when you get home, look in the fireplace because there's a conquistador tile in there. And it's a tile of St. George. Whoa. From the 1920s. It's not St. Christopher, it's not, the beginning of Guadalupe, it's a St. George tile. I made the mistake of calling people, especially one who had just recently passed. And that's when a lot of the activity came, a lot of the banging. It was in the hallway. It's a person in the reflection of a picture that's moving in the thing.
Oh my God.
You can see kind of a shadow.
At one point, George even took a video around his bedroom and hallway, and when reviewing the clip, he noticed a strange face within one of his picture frames.
All of a sudden, there's more things happening. So now it started to happen on the right side of where the bathroom's over there. I took a video of that right side of my bedroom, and I didn't see any orbs or anything, but in the picture, not a mirror, in the picture I see this square, and I go, what the fuck is that? And then I pull it open, and it's a fucking green face.
Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God!
There's a fucking green face. And I said, I hired this lady to come and take him out, and she did.